On today's episode, it's a story that explores what your 30s could or should look like by exploring the notion that sometimes it's okay to not have it all figured out. Our awesome guest, Pondo Belot, takes us on a colorful journey about her dating life, and she shares how she learned to be kinder to herself. Welcome to the Colourful Layers podcast, platform for unfiltered women conversations. My name is Khomotso Taji, but you can just call me Moto. I'm a former radio broadcaster with a love for storytelling. Join me each week as we plug up the courage to peel through life's sometimes beautiful or messy, but always colorful life stories and experiences with amazing women from various walks of life. Hello, everybody. I greet you in the wonderful name of the promise-filled season that is called spring. And I hope that all that you hope for during this season and more seasons to come will definitely take bloom. Or do we say it will bloom? That is the season that we are currently in the wake of in South Africa right now. And in my language, which is called Setswana, spring is called Dikgakologo, which, if my interpretation is anything to go by, it's almost like something clogged being released, and I definitely can relate to that right now in my life during this season. How are you doing, by the way? I hope that you are keeping well as we navigate the world of the vaccinated versus the unvaccinated. Gosh, the times that we live in just continue to become more and more interesting. It's been a bit of a long wait, but here we are, another episode of Colourful Layers, and on that note, welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Colourful Layers podcast. The Colourful Layers podcast. Our episode today is titled 30s Reimagined, and I remember it just like it was yesterday, although it was a few years ago, making the decision to jump into a long-distance bus to go and spend my 30th birthday with my family in Bloemfontein. And this was only due to the self-inflicted pressure that, when turning 30, one had to have a lavish birthday celebrations, and of course, the expectations that I had on myself of where I was meant to be as the clock strikes 30 was just unbearable. To my horror, I was still broke, still struggling with my career, and still single. How dare I? At 30 years old, I officially pronounced myself a failure as I hopped into that bus with a box full of cake and eyes filled with tears. Like, where does this horrible pressure come from, and why do we even succumb to it? It was only after a few years later that, after struggling with myself for quite a bit, I actually learned to give myself the grace and the comfort to just lavish in the beautiful mess that everything else was, and actually just enjoy figuring it out, which I still am, by the way, and wait for it, have some fun while doing it. I know. Anyone who is in their 20s probably thinks that the word fun dies out at the age of 29. But if some of the women that I look up to in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and even 60s are anything to go by, there is still some fun and enjoyable moments coming your way. On today's episode, I absolutely took in everything and learned so much from what our guest had to share. Her courage to pick herself up when it looked like things had just fallen apart right as she was about to reach that pivotal age when everything had to be perfect and shiny with the so-called success. Her name is Pondo Belot. She's a 30-something-year-old marketing specialist. Let's meet Pondo as she drops some empowering, valuable words before getting into her colorful dating journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Colourful Layers podcast. Pondo Belot, welcome to Colourful Layers. How are you doing today?
Hey, thank you so much. I'm great. Ups and downs, like I guess maybe the rest of the country is feeling, but I'm feeling good. Excited to be talking to you. I hope whatever I have to say will be of value to you and the podcast listeners.
I definitely think it will be, just from our previous talks, definitely. Yeah. And I've absolutely been looking forward to this episode. Like I said, it's a theme that's been in my heart, but I just couldn't somehow put it together. So meeting you, it's almost like it was meant to happen. So let's talk about now. You are currently
actively dating, although, I mean, that's not all you do, as you have a very full life, and we will get to that in a bit. But as somebody who, myself, I'm in my 30s, soon to be in my late 30s, I found that, you know, people always found it surprising that, firstly, one, I'm in my 30s, but then when they found out that I'm single, you know, they would also be like super surprised and shocked by that. So guys would often ask, like, what is wrong with you? While my friends would desperately be trying to like match me up. So I just want to find out, how has the experience been for you? And, you know, as an extension, how has COVID changed the scene of dating?
Yo, Muzo, I have been through it all. It's been colorful, if I may use the name of your podcast. It's really been colorful. You know, when I started dating after my divorce, I started dating maybe 2 years. The first time I started dating was 2 years after my divorce.
Whoa.
I thought I was.
Sorry to interrupt. So for 2 years, you were completely single.
I was completely single. I was not ready to mingle. I was just like, yay, I need me. I was focusing so much on myself. Like I was saying, trying to refine myself, redefine myself.
Love that. I love the fact that you took the time to, you know, find yourself, heal. And I think also, even outside of, you know, divorce, there's a lot of things that as people we go through in relationships or in life in general, and the fact that people don't take the time to actually heal. That's why maybe there's a saying, you know, broken people break other people.
That is so true. If I may, like before I got married, right? And I wish it's something that I had known before, and it's something that if there's any value to be taken out of this conversation, that I would want younger people to know before they get into relationships, serious relationships, marriage, whatever, is that healing is so important. Before you even come to anybody else's space, you know, it's important. And often, and it's sad that as you get older, you get broken, you know, for whatever reason, whether it's childhood, through community, and whatever different experiences we experience growing up. And not all of them are intentional hurt, but I think a lot of it is by virtue of the way the society is set up. You know, you get broken, you get hurt so much that by the time you're a young adult, you don't realize just how broken you are. Like you're functional, you know, you're functional on the surface, you do what needs to get done on a day-to-day basis. But I think you don't realize, and relationships, especially deep relationships like marriage, reveal that broken part of yourself. You know, it's a hard truth about relationships. They bring us love and joy, but they reveal the broken parts of ourselves. So my advice to anybody is that take time before you get married, before you go into a serious relationship. Be honest with yourself, come face to face with yourself, and spend so much time healing yourself. You know, in as much as people invest in diets, in going to the gym, in our careers, etc., I don't think as people, both males and females, spend enough time in healing ourselves from the brokenness that we suffer as we, you know, our journey into adulthood. So heal, like, you know, get counseling, you know, get a life coach, through your, you know, Christian counseling, whatever it is, just make sure that you heal yourself so that when you come face to face with somebody else, you bring in the best version of yourself that you can bring into the encounter.
I think from this conversation, we need to create T-shirts. Are you healed, sister?
Yeah, and brother, you know, and brother.
Yes.
A whole lot of brothers out there need healing and they don't realize it. And that's the sad thing about healing, is that everybody's functioning, but we're functioning, but there's so much brokenness underneath that functionality, if I can call it that. And that is the thing that makes it hard for relationships to work, because when the mask goes down and you are with this person, that's when the reality of the pain comes to the surface.
Love this. I actually wish we were face to face with a glass of wine and a good meal talking about this.
Like that book, what is it? What is it?
We're gonna need more wine. The Gabrielle Union book.
Yes, we're gonna need more wine, definitely. That one, yeah.
Dating in your 30s, what does that then look like?
Yo, when I've been through it all. I've met some interesting characters. And okay, let me go back to when I realized that I wasn't healed. And I'm so grateful for some of the besties that I have. That are able to be honest with me, because I remember I dated this guy and then I had to buy him data. One of my closest friends, I won't call her name, she was like, Nike, you are not this person. How are you buying data? Like, girl, I don't know what's going on, but you need to take a step back and just review whether or not you are dating properly. And when I then took a step back, I realized that I'm dating from a place of brokenness. I'm dating from a place of shame. I'm dating from a place of maybe feeling unworthy. Do you know what I mean? And I knew that from that point on, I can't continue because I wasn't necessarily dating people that are the right people. And I went into life coaching, and bless this Linda's soul. One of the things that she taught me was about vibration and energy. She was like, Pondo, the work that I'm going to do with you as your life coach, I'm going to get you back to a high vibration level so that you can attract things that are vibrating at your same level, whether it's work, whether it's friendships, whether it's relationships, because I was almost like dating people that are not vibrating at the same level as me. So I met very interesting characters. Some tried to take advantage of me, some were like treating me like I'm not worthy, like they're not doing me a favor. A lot of those relationships, thank God, didn't last because very quickly I was able to like snap out of it and say, this is not for me. I deserve better. I mean, I've even been catfished. I realized later that I was actually catfished, but I was actually catfished. I was like, how did I end up in a situation where I'm being catfished? But it was because I hadn't fully healed that part of myself that was saying, girl, you're worthy. You're worthy of an amazing relationship. You're worthy of an amazing man, because I still felt so much guilt and shame from a failed marriage. Do you know what I mean?
So I think there are many layers that I want to get into in terms of the things that you've mentioned, the healing, the dating. But yeah. I just want to quickly find out, where are you meeting these people? Because it's, I think before COVID and after COVID, because I remember during the time when I was single, I literally only met, in the 3 years where I was single, I literally only met 3 people. One from the gym, one from work, and one who is an ex. So where are you meeting these people?
Oh my goodness. So I met some at church. I met at work, some work events. The catfisher, I met at a work event. Oh my word! I met at a work event. Some of them have been through, like connections through friends of friends. And I also dabbled in online dating. I remember one time my cousin came to me because our other cousin had met an amazing guy online, and my cousin was like, friend, cousin, maybe you should try this online dating stuff because, some people, I know somebody who's getting married, I know somebody who's in a serious relationship, girl, you should try it, I was quite apprehensive at first, but I did try it, The one thing, even though it didn't necessarily work for me, the one thing that I'm really grateful for is that it almost like it broadened my horizon, because like you, I wasn't meeting people, So for a while, it was nice to get this attention from different kinds of people, even white guys and Indian guys, which I had never been asked out by before. They were taking me out on dates, So it was almost like a bit of a confidence booster, but also I think a reminder of the fact that, girl, you are worthy. There are men out there that are praying to meet somebody like you, so at least it got me back into dating, and I think in appreciating myself and valuing myself, even though nothing concrete came out of online dating. So ladies, if you're not meeting people, do try out online dating. There's definitely something to be gained. Like sometimes it's good just to date, not necessarily with an end goal in mind, but date because dating just to, enjoy, meet different kinds of people, remind yourself of how amazing you are.
What you're saying now reminds me of a sermon I was listening to years ago where it was like a dating, getting married sermon for singles. And the pastor was like, ladies, you're praying to God, God, help me find my husband, bring my husband, but you're not dating.
Exactly. You're sitting at home. It was a bit of a hard adjustment for me because generally I'm like a very private, very reserved person, very guarded person. So opening myself up to online dating was like scary and overwhelming, because suddenly you are flooded. And the reality is that some characters are shady on online dating. So even that navigating those dynamics themselves sometimes was like emotionally overwhelming because not everybody has pure intentions, but I prayed about it and I said, God, please, as much as possible, bring to me people that are worthy of my time, that people that have got pure intentions, and those that are not, please very quickly remove them, from my radar. And I think God did that, and I'm thankful for that.
You're so brave. It's very admirable. You also mentioned something quite funny in our last chat where you said now that it's locked down and, we went into that really hard lockdown, you found that the dynamic also changed where even people that maybe you had been dating before now are like coming back and saying, hey girl, I've reevaluated myself.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I'm having like those hairs, that SMS that's the hair. People are just like, I had another guy that I dated. He was just like, before lockdown, I was going through stuff. I was about to go into my 40s. And, you came into my life, you challenged me because if I look at how your life is set up, you're much younger than me, but you seem to be, you have it more together than I am. There are all these dreams that I had for myself. And then when you came into my life before lockdown, I was still like all over the place. I was still trying to live my best life. And I admit I didn't necessarily maybe treat you the way that I needed to. I didn't value you, but what lockdown has made me realize is that, like the grass is not always greener. Do you know what I mean? And sometimes we leave the things that are here, trying to chase things that are out there that seem shiny. But then when we get to the shiny stuff, we realize, how much polishing we still need to do, So I've had a lot of those. Almost all the guys that I tried to sort of like date after my divorce in some way or another have tried to come back, because I guess lockdown, people are just now face to face with themselves. They can't hide behind constant partying, constant alcohols, constant work meetings, blah, blah, blah. It's just you and your house. And then I think people maybe started realizing that gap. And then some of them I've had to say, guys, unfortunately, your time is up. Because I gave you enough chances back then. Like, I'm not going back there. If it's taken you this long to value me, maybe you and I really didn't have it going to begin with. Sorry.
They say silence gives you perspective. Clearly, lockdown was giving a lot of people perspective and time to reflect.
100%. Yeah, sometimes it's hard to believe. So some of them I try to be empathetic or compassionate because I'm like, I do understand from that perspective. I'm happy for them. I'm happy because I want everybody to heal. So if you're healing, if you're growing, if you're realizing your mistakes, I'm really genuinely happy for those guys. But it doesn't necessarily mean that then the next chapter of the journey is with me.
True.
Yeah.
So my next question is actually twofold. And it just comes from, obviously being somebody who's in their 30s. And I found that, there was a lot of challenges that came with dating in your 30s. Internal ones, the pressure, the self-pressure that I put on myself, and also just, in the dating space. I just want to find out from you, just one, because I think there's a difference between dating in your 20s and when you're 30s. What were some of the challenges that you have faced? And then secondly, the stigma that also comes with being a divorcee and now getting into the dating pool.
Yeah. So dating in my 30s, for me, I think the biggest challenge I've faced is that men, especially older men, feel like you have to take their nonsense because you're in your 30s. Suddenly you must just be this, take scraps, whatever scraps that they're bringing to the table, because now you are 30. For some reason, you must take it because you are 30, you're running out of your time. Maybe your ovaries are going to get stale or whatever the reason is. Now you must suddenly be taking this nonsense, You know what? And I think, and it's got nothing to do with age, right? I think you must have your fundamental values that are not bendable, but within that, there are certain aspects that should be bendable, and it's got nothing to do with age. Do you know what I mean? So I think people maybe confuse the list and think that it must be a list of 30, things that you're looking for. It's not necessarily that. The list is about saying, this is who I am fundamentally. These are my fundamental values. These are my fundamental principles that for my own being, I cannot compromise on those things. But then there are things that are like, shiftable, depending on the kind of person that you meet. And that's why they coined it the 80-20 rule. You can't operate from a place of 20. You have to operate from a place of 80. Yes, 80% must be in place. And yes, the other 20 is flexible, So I found that when you are now dating in your 30s, suddenly you must be operating from a place of 20%. You must accept the 20%, and then the 80% is not there, which I believe is unfair, because I know for a fact I'm not perfect. I'm far, far, far from perfect. But I know that on the table, I'm definitely not bringing 20%. I bring a lot. When I'm in a relationship, I bring my full self to a relationship.
Makes so much sense. And the stigma.
And then, if I may just also answer your second question about divorce. The most, my divorce, because along the way, when I started dating, most guys that I'd met didn't really care, A lot of them were just like, yay, great, because you know how it is to have your heart broken, so we know that you'll appreciate the relationship. Some of them were like, yo, you know what, if you've been married before, at least your expectations and how you conduct and how you show up in a relationship is more realistic, So most people appreciated that. Most of the men that I came across appreciated that. And then I met one guy that I fell in love with. I don't know if it was love or whatever. I thought I loved him at that point. That guy broke my heart, because for the first time, after so many years, I think it was now probably 5 years or so into my divorce, he was like, sorry, Anna, he can't date a divorcee. That's not what he wants for himself. He can't date a divorcee or somebody who has a child, because he was just never that guy. In his entire life plan, he was going to get married to somebody who's never been married before, somebody who's never had a child before. So he's not going to do that, So for me, it was the most devastating experience ever, But what I'm grateful for, it made me then go back, because it revealed to me that there was a certain part of myself that wasn't healed, because that shouldn't have affected me as much as it did, So I'm grateful that then, as painful as it was, he shone a spotlight into that part which still needed to be cleansed. And then I went and I did the work to say, but Pondo, why are you so? If that's his opinion, that's his choice. If that's what he wants for himself, great. That's what he wants for himself. That has that has nothing to do with your worth. Your worth doesn't decrease because that's what he's saying. It doesn't. And why are you suddenly allowing that comment to make you feel so unworthy? So I went back and I took a break from dating, and I went back and I did the work to say you are worthy, irrespective of whether or not you're a divorcee. A divorcee is a part of your life. It's something that you went through. It's unfortunate, it was sad, but it doesn't define you. Do you know what I mean? And as a result, I hardly even call myself a divorcee. If it doesn't come up in the conversation, I don't even bring it up because that's no longer who I am. That's not a label that I need to wear. And it's not a label that I need to allow people to put on me, because it's a small part of my past, a very tiny part of my past.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the Colourful Layers podcast. The Colourful Layers podcast. Coming up on Colourful Layers, Pondo takes us through her reinvention process.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I want us to transition now a bit into your reinvention process, because I think that's really important. When we started, obviously you mentioned how something that was supposed to scar you or break you, the divorce, actually assisted you in growing and becoming like a fuller person that you are. So how would you describe that? I think you kind of touched on it. Like, how would you describe that process? And I think a lot of people, they speak about healing. Like, what was it for you? Like, just almost like the specifics.
Okay. So for me, the significant specifics that I went through. So immediately after my divorce, literally, like immediately, I went through a Christian counseling program. It's called Divorce Care. So it's almost like Alcoholic Anonymous, but for divorcees, So it's like about 3 to 4 months program. And it was the most life-changing thing for me. So I even said that when I meet somebody who I'm going to settle down with, whether I get married again or a life partner or whatever, we're going to do divorce care together. Because ironically, the things that you learn in divorce care are things that I believe partners would benefit from learning before they get married. So that helped me a lot in terms of, I guess, dealing with the divorce. And I guess more than anything, refinding my new character in Christ as a divorcee. Remember, because I'm a Christian, so when you get divorced, the shame is not just from a society perspective, it's also, if I can call it, from the Christian community that, oh my gosh, she is this big Christian, but how is she getting divorced, So having to refine my new character in Christ as now a divorced woman. So divorce care really helped me with that. I read a lot. The day my husband officially filed for divorce, I went onto Amazon because I'm a big Kindle reader. I'm not like a paperback person. I read online, so I started Googling books. So I bought a lot of books about divorce. So as the journey was unfolding, like nothing was too much of a surprise because the book had told me, people turn their back on you. People who you thought were in your corner, suddenly, they just they're turning your back. You're like, oh, I thought you loved me, how are you turning your back on me? Sometimes people turn their back because they didn't know how to handle the situation. And another thing that I mentioned, I attended life coaching. So life coaching helped me a lot in terms of now restructuring my life, because now you had to transition from being a divorce. When I got divorced, I quit my work. I needed time out for work. So I went on a 6-month sabbatical because I could just feel myself that, if I don't quit work, I'm going to literally break. I could just feel myself. I was like 5'2", reaching this snapping. And so I had taken a 6-month sabbatical. Then during that 6 months, a good friend of mine introduced me to an amazing lady called Sis Linda. And Sis Linda, she was my life coach. So she helped me restructure to say, okay, this new person is going to emerge. What do you want to come out? And how do you move forward in terms of because now you can rebuild everything, you can restructure. The next job that you take, you've got time to think about what you want that to look like, your what industry do you want to go into, what kind of friendships do you want to form, what kind of relationships. So for me, those were, I guess the key significant things that I went through to restructure my life. Yeah, and I'm eternally grateful that God blessed me with the resources, whether it's time, whether it's financial, whether it's people resources, who have helped me restructure my life during that time where it was a crisis. But God, for somehow, surrounded me with people that helped me deal with that crisis in different ways,
And I think what's interesting, like just talking to you and even just in my thinking around this episode, in that, that obviously the divorce happened as you were in your early 30s, but the 30s have kind of like have this stigma that, it's that time of your life where you need to have figured yourself out, things need to be coming together. And I remember like on my 30th birthday, I had put so much pressure on myself that I didn't even want to have like a celebration, because I felt like I was not at a point where, as somebody who's in their 30s should be. But now you realize that this is actually a beautiful time for figuring yourself out. And sometimes you don't have to have it all figured out in your 30s.
Yeah. And I think that pressure, because remember I got married when I was like, 28, 29, 30, a huge chunk. Now that thinking back, shame my poor ex, thinking back, I think I spent a huge chunk of my time being under that pressure because 30 was around the corner. I have to have this figured out. I have to have my MBA. I have to have this. I can imagine probably it was putting him under so much pressure as well, So one of the things that the divorce, as well as Sis Linda, it liberated me from that, Suddenly, everything that I had put, like my entire 20s, were packed into making sure by 30. I mean, I think I got my MBA, I was 28. Yeah. So by the time everything was like packed into getting all of these things by 30. Do you know what I mean? But what my divorce, it liberated me from that, because like you're saying, then you get to 30 and okay, I want to get married. We must make all this money. We must live in the fanciest house. We must have the fanciest cars. We must go to the best holidays. Constantly working towards attaining these things that when the divorce happened, all of that came crashing in front of my face. And then in the end, none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered in that point, and I'm not even joking, that's how bad it was staying sane. So Sis Linda also then helped me reconfigure my life. Where she liberated me. She's like, actually, like you're saying, you don't have to have everything figured out now. You don't have to. Like, you probably have another 40 years or 50 years because you seem healthy. You really just chill. Give yourself a license to chill. Just chill.
And I guess, sorry, Pondo, I guess that speaks to life. Like, we don't have to have it figured out. Just give yourself the grace to take it one step at a time.
Yeah, for me, that has been my most liberated feeling. Some people who look at me now and I'm using ambitious in inverted commas, who the ambitious Pondo that they might have known in my 20s and the Pondo that they know now, they might be like, oh, she's not as ambitious as she used to be. But I've been liberated. Like for me now, I focus on things that matter. And I've got so much joy, genuine joy and genuine contentment, because I'm free from all these shackles that had me tied up in my 20s.
Something I should have actually asked you earlier is, I'm interested in knowing how you've taken us through obviously like what the healing looked like, but part of the reinventing or reimagining yourself is obviously with cultivating a full life, so that when even a guy comes in, he's a part of, not your whole life. So I'm interested in knowing, how did you manage to cultivate that full life?
You know what? One thing I'll forever be grateful for is, and I try and say this as much as possible, God has blessed me with amazing people. I met a lot of amazing people from different parts of my life, So people step forward, like my single friends, like I remember when I was on a sabbatical, suddenly, because I had all this time in my hands, people would be willing to hang out. So I'd go on these short lefts and these impromptu holidays with my friends. And then suddenly I'm like, okay, I need to go back into like a proper fitness routine. A very close friend of mine then became my fitness partner. So I used to see her literally every day. I remember I used to stalk her. I'd go to her house. We used to get a personal trainer together. Every morning I'd be at her house. We'd train together and then we'd end up having tea together. And then her and her husband welcomed me into their home. So almost every other night when I was just after my divorce, I'd go have supper at their home, because they probably realize that Pondo probably doesn't even have energy to cook, But, whatever I wanted, I was like, okay, I want to travel. The universe either brought me resources to travel or people that I could travel with. When I wanted to get fitness, suddenly I was open to different kinds of fitness things that I could do. Like life suddenly brought me all these opportunities. Like life has so many opportunities out there. And suddenly those became visible. God blessed me with resources. God blessed me with people that I could do those things together, And it was like that until I was able to stand on my own. And then suddenly, when I was able to stand on my own, I then cultivated a life of things that I could do on my own. Like suddenly, like now, I go to gym alone, I can travel alone, I can go to a restaurant alone, etc. But back then when I needed people to carry me, to be my crutches, God brought me those people. Even in church, suddenly there was church groups and services and programs that I could do to fill up my time. I think my previous perception of relationships was take, what can I take out of the relationship? I'm in the relationship because I want to take. I want to take something out of it. That sort of like evolved over time. And I'm not perfect, I'm far from perfection, but my perception or my approach has changed slightly into, how much can I give? And hopefully the more I give, the more I can, get out of the relationship.
Well, Pondo, I really hope that you will get all of that and more. Like you're such an incredible person, even in the conversations that I've had with you in terms of how laid back you are and how much work you've done. It's just so inspiring. So yeah, I'm wishing for all of that and more for you.
I receive from your mouth to God's ears, please. And hopefully some person listening to this podcast will forward to somebody who will forward it to somebody who, and voila!
Yes, girl.
And out the ears of my knight in shining armor, who might, come find me and sweep me off my feet.
A huge thank you to my guest, Pondo Belot. What an absolute gem. Totally enjoyed that episode, and I hope that you also did and took something away. Did you relate with anything that she had to say? Please feel free to comment and share your thoughts with us. Be sure to also like and subscribe to Colourful Layers. We are available on YouTube, Spotify, as well as Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much for tuning in.